The following content is provided under a Creative Commons license. Your support will help MIT Open Courseware continue to offer high-quality educational resources for free. To make a donation or view additional materials from hundreds of MIT courses, visit MIT Open Courseware at ocw.mit.edu.
So let's talk about memory today and the fragile power of memory. If memory didn't work, we wouldn't remember anything, we wouldn't learn anything. So we know it has to work reasonably. But it has a number of fragile aspects we'll talk about where, of course, we forget things. But on top of that, it turns out there's ways in which our memories get less accurate and distorted, are not actual records of our experience, but rather our interpretations or our memory of our memory. And we'll talk about experiments that reveal that. So, to a large extent, we'll talk about what do we know from scientific research about why we remember some of our lives and why we forget so many other things that we experience. And a version of the way that people sometimes think about it is, in what sense is memory like a camera, that every experience you have is stored in your mind somewhere? We all have the experience, perhaps, that something will remind you of something you haven't thought about for days, weeks, or years. Right? And you go, oh, well, it must be all stored there. I just need the right cue or the right path to get that memory. So that's one version of memory. Everything is in us, recorded. Sometimes we can get to it, sometimes we can't. Another version is the way to think about your memory. It's kind of like a punch bowl. You put in some milk, and then you put in some orange juice and swirl it around, and then you put in some Coca-Cola and swirl it around. And it's not a desirable drink that you have in your bowl, but you can no more get the specific milk or the specific orange juice or the specific Coke because they're all mixed together. And is memory more like that? Because life goes on, things get mixed in, and the raw memory is never recoverable from the mixture of subsequent experiences, thoughts, and feelings. So we'll bring the same perspective a little bit. Bottom-up memory might be, really the video camera, if we had it, an actual recording of what we hear, what we see, what we experience out there in the world. Top-down processes are the mental things we have in our minds that let us interpret what's out there. Concepts, expectations. Also, it turns out, you'll see, that subsequent experiences go back and change memories from prior times. And which of these things, the bottom-up original experience or the top-down interpretation, grows over time to constitute your memory? So we can have a very simple model of memory. A flash for a moment. I'll give you an example of how people test this, of sensory memory, very tiny, moments only. Short-term memory that you can rehearse in some cases. Somebody tells you a number and you can repeat it over and over again. You have that capacity. And then long-term memory, things that last for a long time. You can define these things many different ways. When we talk about the brain organization of human memory, we'll say that short-term memory probably lasts seconds, and everything after that is long-term memory. Now, of course, if you just experience something, you remember it better. If it's a week, a month, a year, 5 years from now, most likely less better, right? So time passes. But we think almost all of that is in the context of long-term memory capacities of your mind. So here's the kind of experiment. I won't really, we'll do a couple of exercises at your seat, but this I'm just going to give you a feeling, because this would require millisecond timing to do correctly. But the way they approached this sensory memory, the flash of memory, capturing for a moment what's out there, is something like this. So imagine your job is to report back the letters that you see. Okay. Yeah, you're getting a number of them. Okay, all right. So that method would be, you just did what's called the whole report method. Tell me everything you saw. They did another approach, which is present letters. And then just as it disappeared, they would get a tone, a high, medium, or low tone. And that would tell them which row to report, the top row, the middle row, or the bottom row, depending on the tone they heard just after the flash, immediately after the flash. Does that make sense? Okay? It's gone, but the tone is telling you which one to report. And the striking finding in this was this. If they showed you 12 letters like you just saw and said, tell me everything you see, people could give you about 4 letters back. Maybe you had that experience, about 4 letters accurately. If they gave you the letters, they flashed them, then you got the tone. For one row only, you got about 3 letters correct. Now this is interesting. The letters are gone, but it's kind of like as if the photograph of your memory is fading, but if you put your attention somewhere, you can still pull it back but just a little bit of it. So, okay? Because here you get 4 out of 12, here you get 3 out of 12. Almost the same, because your attention can zoom in on that fading mental image of what you just saw. So there's much is sensed, but attention only selects a little bit to be remembered. Okay? So that's this very first moment of memory. But one of the more impressive lines of research is the next moment, short-term memory, keeping in mind something in your mind briefly. And one of the most striking aspects of human short-term memory is it's limited in how much it can hold, and across a tremendous range of materials, words, letters, shapes, tones, and so on, you can hold approximately 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. Limited short-term memory. So now I need somebody who's willing at their chair to do something. You will have to, I'm going to read to you numbers and ask you to repeat them back, but your eyes will need to be closed, and it'll be fairly challenging. All right, thank you very much. Okay, all right. Okay, so, close your eyes, and here we go. Ready? Keep your eyes closed until we're done. Repeat after me. 6, 1. When I'm done. I'm sorry. Yeah. Ready? 6, 1, 9, 4. Repeat.
6, 1, 9, 4.
Right. Ready? 3, 7, 8, 5, 2. Repeat.
3, 7, 8, 5, 2.
Right. Ready? 9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 3. Repeat.
9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 3.
Right. Ready? 4, 2, 6, 9, 8, 5, 1. Repeat.
4, 2, 6, 9, 8, 5, 1.
Very good. Ready? 8, 1, 6, 3, 7, 2, 4, 9. Repeat.
8, 1, 6, 7, 4, 2, 1, 9.
Okay, perfect. I'll open your eyes. Thank you very much. So you did terrific. You got 4 right, 5 right, 6 right, 7 right, 8 right. You got it mostly right. You just reversed 1 or 2. Okay. 7 plus or minus 2. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how advanced you are. There used to be some confusions about this because they would say kids in different countries have different limits. Okay, and they say, "Oh, our country's smarter than your country." Okay, and people, or our educational system is better than your educational system. It turned out that all of that got equated around the world if you counted up the number of syllables that are in the digits. The real unit of memory here are syllables. Okay, so in English, it is mostly. Most of the numbers are 1 syllable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all 1 syllable. 7 gets 2, right? 8 is 1 syllable. 9 is 1 syllable. In some other languages, the words that go with the digits are 2 syllables. And the real unit is... So countries that have 2 syllables, they had lower spans not because they were dumber or had a worse education system. It's because the real unit is number of syllables. Because you're hearing it, it's language. Okay, is that right? Okay. So around the world, it's just a fundamental capacity of the human mind is that you're limited to this kinds of stuff. So how do we get around that? Why are we not always barely able to do anything, okay, with very small amounts of information? So it's just a constraint of our minds. It's because background prior knowledge, things you know before you have to learn something, has a very powerful effect. It allows you for the information to be retained in memory, but it has a double-edged sword, which is kind of a theme about today. As much as it helps you remember things, it can fool you into misremembering things. And let me give you a concrete example. So you can put chess displays in front of people who are either beginning chess players, have played for a while, or are masters. And they're not going to play. They're going to look at it. The pieces will be swept to the side, and then they have to put all the pieces back out of memory into the same location where they just saw it. They know that's going to happen, right? So it's a memory test. Here's the pieces. Take a look. The examiner sweeps the pieces to the side, and you put them back as well as you can. You see it. It gets swept to the side, and you reproduce it from memory, what you just saw. And here's the performance of master players and beginner players in this case. So people who have played a lot of chess and people who played very little chess. It's better to be high, the number of correct pieces. And there's 2 kinds of displays. In one kind of displays, what we call the normal displays, those are ones that could really have happened in a game. They were kind of reasonable configurations of pieces. The random displays are pieces all over the place in a configuration that you're not likely to see in a real game of chess. Equal number of pieces. And look what happens. The best performance are master players who see a real normal chess configuration. Here are the players who are beginners. And look at the worst performances. The chess masters who see a random setup. So what do you guess is happening? Yeah?
Well, people who play chess a lot memorize games and positions, so they're used to seeing those patterns, and when they see a random configuration, they can't recreate it as easily.
Right, so the people who play chess a lot have a lot of configurations in their mind, background knowledge. They use that background knowledge of what a chess array means. Somebody's in trouble, somebody's winning, something interesting is happening in this corner. That knowledge helps them escape the boundaries of 7 plus or minus 2. And they do a lot better than the beginners, for whom it doesn't mean much. It's just a bunch of stuff out there, hard to remember. But what happens here when the pieces are random? The chess masters are making mistakes because they're putting the pieces in the places they ought to be, rather than the places they perversely were randomly located. Okay? If you're a chess player, you don't like that random board, right? It doesn't feel right. But they're trying to be accurate. But now they're misplacing their memory for what they actually saw with their mental model of what ought to be out there. Okay? Now, the players who are not so good, you don't see much of a difference between these lines. They don't understand when it's random. They don't understand when it's organized. It's just a bunch of pieces. Is that okay? So the double edge of background knowledge. Background knowledge lets you escape the bounds of limited short-term memory, but at a cost of sometimes substituting in for the actual experience you had. Okay, so we'll try this. Organize, and people use the word chunking as the way in which you use your background knowledge to get big pieces of information stored that are better than you'd think from short-term memory limits. So here's a quick one. Ready? Oh, I need a volunteer, actually. Not too bad. Wow, tough volunteer day. You're mad at me about the exam. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, ready? What were the letters? Okay, how about these ones? All right. You see, same letters. It's just that now you see the chunks, and you can map them onto long-term memory more easily. Okay? Plus, I showed it longer. Okay. Anybody else want to try something like this? Thank you. Okay, ready? Here we go. Ready? Oops, so they're just showing that. What letters do you see? Ready? Okay. Now I'm going to let your background knowledge triumph. Ready? All right. Same letters, right? But you can use your back. It's the same letters. The others, okay, you don't believe me. All right. Same letters. All it is this one. Nothing, your background knowledge is useless. Your knowledge of words, your knowledge of the alphabet, useless. Same information in a sense. Same number of letters, same identity of letters, but now your background knowledge is powerful. Okay. Okay. I need somebody else. One more volunteer. Thank you. All right, ready? I'm going to show you a sentence. This is meant to be hard, the first one. Don't worry about it, okay? Here we go. Can you tell me what they were?
Read, paper, steer, car, fish.
That's pretty good. Okay, let me show you another equal number of words. Ready? Go. Okay, what is it?
While I was walking around.
Yeah. You would do better. Okay, I know, it's hard to pull these things off. Well, anyway, so 13 words, people would do pretty miserably at this, although you did very well. A lot better at this, because again, you can use your background knowledge of what does a sentence mean, what's the organized syntax, all your background knowledge can be applied. Again, the power of background knowledge is immense. I can tell you that if you go work somewhere, or if you're working in a lab now, or if you're working in any place, you might be impressed by people who are older than you and what they know and what they can learn and pick up. It's background knowledge, background knowledge, background knowledge. It lets you quickly understand an idea because you can interpret it from prior ideas you know. Quickly read a paper because you slot it into prior things you know. Background knowledge is incredibly powerful to let you discover the signal and get a lot of the specific information in any kind of information out there.